to Dr. Diego and Debbie. I'm here at the Allende Center for Regenerative Medicine and Vitality, and this is Dr. Allende.
Hi, Deb.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Today, I want to discuss a topic so many people have been asking me about. It's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me when they say, ask him how we can lose weight. What do you say?
Wow, that's a big question to ask with a lot of answers. Because I think we talked about it before, we touched on it before about, well, how did we get there to begin with, right? And so there's a whole lot of things go into that, including lifestyle changes, the foods you buy, how you eat, when you eat, and the situations that get you there. So it's not always just an approach where, you know, there's a magic bullet. There is no magic bullet yet, not yet. But I think that you have to approach it from all angles. And so classically, from a treatment standpoint, from medications and supplements, a lot of things we can use. And so we can approach that from different angles, but there is supplements and there's medications and they're effective, but they're effective for certain people, and then some of the people are going to respond to different ones. And you just got to figure out what is the product that works best for you. And so I may not have this is going to work, it's not going to work for everybody, but
Right.
maybe I have something in my arsenal that I can offer, and we can approach it from a different angle and still get the results we're looking for. And that's one part of it. I think the other part is like how to get there. Like we said, we have to figure out how to avoid the pattern that gets us going back in that direction. And I liken it to things like smoking. How do you change your smoking behavior? Well, first of all, you can't do the same routine that you normally do when you're trying to quit. And you can't hang out with the same people that you normally do, because although you may love them and they're good friends, the problem is that you associate that relationship with having a cigarette or having that unhealthy meal or something like that. And so we need to fundamentally change that. And that means to restructure your whole schedule.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree with you, especially about the people you hang out with, the schedule. I used to have my happy hour buddies, and I wasn't a drinker per se. I'd go in, I'd order iced tea or a Diet Coke or whatever, but we would order an appetizer, a platter. And I couldn't figure out why I was gaining weight. Well, you know, it's chicken I'm eating, chicken wings. There are so many different plans for losing weight. So many different. I currently am following one of the most popular ones. I won't say the initials or anything, but it's one that works for me. Might not work for everybody.
Right.
I had a friend walk through my kitchen and go, "You've got cookies, and look at this candy. You're not supposed to eat that." I said, "I can eat that as long as I'm held accountable for it. You know, I don't eat the whole bag, and I don't eat it every day. You know, and I feel like, okay, as long as I'm staying within my points and I'm eating nutritious food and raw fruits and vegetables, and you know, and as I mentioned before, I'm also sort of kind of following that blood type diet.
Right.
And I've noticed since I've stopped eating beef, which I dearly love, and I've cut out quite a bit of cheese and ice cream, one of my other favorites, the weight kind of just melts off. Now, you can actually be overweight in poundage without being obese, isn't that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Now, wouldn't you be considered overweight for your height?
Yeah, I'd probably be considered obese too.
By weight only?
By body mass index, right?
Okay.
So what that means is just your height and how much weight you have. It creates a ratio, and then that ratio, the higher it gets, the more likely you are to be overweight, then obese, then moderate obese, then severely obese. And so there's different scales within that structure. So yeah, I would be considered obese because ideally for my height, I probably should weigh about 185 pounds, 188 pounds. But because I like to save most of my muscle structure and the larger, skeletal mass that I have, then I'm able to hold the weight more appropriately, and I approximate more closer to about 240 pounds. And so one would say, well, that's pretty unhealthy, but And I would say, yeah, you're right, and as I get older, I'll probably reduce that weight over time, because ultimately, that's gonna be better for my back, and my hips, and my knees, and I think ideally that those are the things I'm looking at long-term. But, so that's in the back of my head. But certainly, if I'm gonna go to the gym, and I'm gonna exercise, then I'm gonna have a tendency to have more muscle bulk, and it's gonna weigh more, because it's more dense. And if you have more muscle mass, yeah, you're gonna weigh a little more. And so, I think that is something that we can approach as we go along, but ultimately rather, when we figure out how much of your muscle mass is, or how much your body mass is muscle, and how much is fat, and then the idea is to reduce the fat percentage, and then initially that's what we're working at, and as we get older, of course, that should be reducing dramatically, because as we get older, we're gonna actually have more fat mass, because we're losing muscle mass as we go for a lot of reasons, including hormones, lack of activity. So, but we can retain as much of it as possible through some interventions, and that's why you should obviously see your doctor on a regular basis to make sure that, and they are basically educated in nutrition and a good exercise routine, or can at least plug you in to seeing someone who can help retain that muscle mass, because as we age, frailty syndrome is probably the biggest predictor of our life expectancy. Although, cardiac disease or coronary disease or heart attack is probably the number one cause of death in this country. But as we get older, we want to avoid the unnecessary deaths that affect us, and that's the quality of life structure factors that affect us, such as falling and breaking a hip, and then it's very difficult to get out of the hospital once you start to get up into the octogenarian years and things like that if you have a broken hip. And so the idea is to be very stable and have some strength, because that's going to prevent falls, and it's going to help you with coordination. So I'm a big fan of that. But going back to your topic about our weight loss and how we get there, and I mentioned, the medications and the supplementation and changing your routine, right? And the people maybe that will be associated with those routines and developing a completely new, and I'm not saying people lose your friends, I'm saying that you need to change your habit. So if you like your friends to smoke, then you probably should get gum and start chewing gum if you're going to hang out with them. And if you want to lose weight, but you like certain foods, well, start buying foods that may look like the foods that you like, but may not act like the foods that you like in your body.
I have a friend who is a physician in the Modesto area, and he's been watching our videos, and he commented, and he said, wow, Dr. Allende's fit. Quite a compliment. He's also a martial artist, and I say, hi, James Radula.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
And my mother, when she was in her late 70s, I made her sign up for aqua aerobics classes. She wasn't getting out and doing enough activity, so I made her sign up for aqua aerobics classes. So after 3 months, just only going twice a week, she goes, well, I didn't lose that much weight. I only lost 7 pounds. But your pants are falling off, Mom. She, only after 3 months of aqua aerobics, had toned enough of her muscles to where she had shrunk in size. So I think a lot of us we're stuck on that number on the scale rather than, muscle.
Yeah, I don't look at scales, and I urge patients and friends and family and anybody that don't look at the scale. The scale is important to figure out somewhere where you are, but when you following your health, you want to look at more like what your physique looks like, what your body looks like. Are you losing, like you said, poundages? Are you losing waistline? Are your clothes changing, like how they fit? And so that's what we're looking for, because you're going to get positive results in that way, as opposed to being fixated on a number on a scale. Because remember, if you make muscle, what's going to happen to that scale?
Well, you could be 130 pounds of fat or 130 pounds of muscle. 130 pounds of fat or 130 pounds of muscle. When I was in junior high, they weighed all of us girls in PE, and I was so embarrassed at my number weight. And there was actually a very nice little gal who was shorter than me, but she was very rotund. She was very fat, and she weighed less than I did. And in my mind, I couldn't figure it out. How can she be so fat and weigh less than I do?
But this is also the stigma associated with numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, and my point about muscle is that if you're exercising and getting more tone, what's going to happen to that scale? It's not going to go up. It's not going to go down. It's going to go up probably a little because you're getting more muscle mass. It's more dense and it pulls in more water. So therefore, you're going to weigh a little bit more probably, but your body may look better. And so the idea is that you want to reduce the percentage of fat. So that's why we check percentage of fat, because that's probably more indicative of what's going on. And so we want to put some more muscle on, and yeah, it's going to be a little bit heavier. But I think ultimately, as I was saying before, as you start to get a little older, yeah, we want to start to reduce our weight, even our muscle mass over time too. It's going to be healthier for us because the skeleton is going to have too much compression on it. We live in a world that's got lots of gravity, and ultimately that weighs on us. Our joints and our discs, and they get the cartilage and the fluid in them squeezed out all day long by gravity. And so we want to maximize minimize those effects over time, so our quality of life is excellent, so we can stay active and do stuff and have fun, right? And minimize the load on our heart, right? So these are why things, and our joints, and things like. So that's why I tell you those things. But yeah, back to you.
Oh gosh, I mean, I get this all the time from people in the medical profession and teaching, everything. But they use the term, and this is what I mean by fingernails on the chalkboard: lose weight. Take your shoes off, you'll lose weight. Put your purse down, you'll lose weight. But they don't. I don't even know how to word it. I did lose weight a few years ago. I lost weight by joining this program and found out I hadn't been eating enough. That's another fallacy that a lot of people think overeating causes weight gain or the inability to lose weight. But if you're eating the wrong thing, I always use this analogy, is, well, okay, you've got a chicken breast and it's, I don't know, what, 170 calories? Or
Yeah, it depends. So we say 4 ounces, and that turns out to be like 120 calories.
Okay, so we'll say 120 calories of chicken breast or 120 calories of sugary soda. Which one are you going to pick? And not all calories are created equal, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, you could eat the exact same amount of calories in a day of healthy, nutritious food or junk food.
Right? It's the response of the body to the calories you're taking in. And people, what does that mean? Well, the more carbohydrate-rich foods that you eat, including things like bread, pasta, rice, tortillas, pastries, cakes, booze, because we have to have booze,
Sugar.
juice, and those things, and even fruit to a certain extent, because fruit is just one step above glucose. Glucose is all those products I just mentioned. Fructose is just above it, and that's your fruit, and then it becomes glucose. So it's not as heavily loaded, it's about 30% less heavily loaded, but it's still loaded in the sense that when your body sees it, it gets a rush of insulin to try to take out that sugar and put it in storage. And so it's that rush of insulin that inhibits you to lose weight. Plus it makes you tired, makes you want to take a nap, does some storage and some growth hormone effects by loading up and building, so it builds some muscle mass, but at the same time it's building lots of fat mass, as opposed to the same calories in things like fats. Okay, fats have more calories, it takes a little more time to digest them though, and they don't create an insulin response like that. Okay, and so even though fat's got per gram twice as many calories, it doesn't shoot the insulin through the roof, like say 100 points, it shoots it to maybe like 10 points, 15 points. Okay, and then protein, similar effect, shoots it up a little bit, but not very high. Now again, if you overeat, it's about portion control. You're taking too many calories, and your body's going to have to put some into storage. Okay, so you're going to put on excess weight. Okay, but it's the type of foods that you eat also, and also when you eat them. And for example, I'm going to go to bed at night, and I decide I'm going to eat something that's carb-based food, like piece of pie or a cake. Well, that's the wrong food to take, because every bit of that went into storage. Every bit went into storage. But as opposed to maybe like, well, I'm going to eat like maybe a small piece of cracker, say, or a piece of some wheat bread or half a piece of whip, and I'm going to put peanut butter or almond butter on it. Something's got a protein, so it's going to decrease the insulin load that you excrete out of your body. And so that will have a different effect in terms of storing. It's not that it's not getting it's going to take a longer time to absorb it, and it's going to have a smaller insulin response, so it's not so much going to put on weight in terms of fat. Plus, you got some protein, and it makes you feel satiated faster. So it makes you feel full a little quicker, and that's why I always tell people, eat slow. If you eat slow, you'll wind up eating a lot less food, because your body sends out little chemical hormones that say, hey, I'm full now. Even though you may not have eaten very much, it's just that it's a normal reaction of our body to send these signals out to stop the eating process, to try to control it. When you eat carbohydrates, you have a less of a response to that, and so you have a lot more loading that can take place. And people who eat fast will have a higher load too, in the sense that more insulin release, and they don't give their body enough time to say, hey, I had enough. And so you can stop eating now, which is typically what people do. And I always tell people, put a little bit of food on your plate. If you feel like it's not enough after you finished it, then go back and get a little more. Don't fill your plate. If you fill your plate, it's like the idea is, oh, I got to finish all that. So the idea is not to think I have to finish that because we're going to throw away. I don't want to throw away food because we all grew up where you got beatings, right? When you threw away your food because there was enough food back when we were younger. And so now we have a world of abundance, and probably people throw a lot more food away than they ever did because there's so much more of it. And so now when we cook food, we expect if the plate is full, you finish the plate. And I'm going to argue that make your plate smaller. Where your typical plate is, put about 2/3 of what your typical plate is. See how you do with that, and eat it slow. And then actually, if you start to feel full sooner, then you can go to half of the plate that you used to eat. And I think that you can start to minimize the portions that you're taking in of food, because that really is a big deal. And then you change the foods that you eat. You avoid the foods that my classic, bread, pasta, rice, tortillas, pastries, cakes, booze, and juice. Because those are the things that are going to put on a lot more weight.
Okay.
And
Well, yeah, I was actually amazed at the amount of food that I could eat when eating the proper food.
right.
One of my favorite snacks is almonds, and I can eat 1/4 of a cup, which is, 30 to 35 almonds. Before I would eat 5. I was actually, as I put it, starving myself fat a few years back. I was taking a salad for lunch, I was eating a small breakfast, and I was basically starving. And if you don't eat enough at night, you will wake up in the middle of the night hungry. So when I got on this plan, and I was very hesitant at first. You mean I have to eat that much? And I'm still going to lose? In 9 months, I had lost 25 pounds, whereas I'd had no success. Absolutely none before.
Right. So you found the one that works for you.
I found the one that works for me. Yeah.
I wanted to touch base on hydration.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because everybody's dehydrated all the time. Everybody. People say, how do you know that? I'm like, everybody is.
Yeah.
So, we don't have these little measuring kits now, but we're going to have them soon. You can actually
Really?
measure people's hydration. Yeah, no, we can do these specific gravities, and it gives us an idea. But there's a better way of doing some vector testing it's not mainstream yet, because those things we're looking at doing them for prize fighting, so we can make sure that people are not dehydrated before they weigh in, because we have a limit to where it's
Sure.
acceptable. And so we have these parameters, and so if somebody comes in and they're 10%, and that's it, it's over. And so we have cutoffs. You need to be less than 10% dehydrated. Being hungry, it can maybe be a sign of just being thirsty and that you're dehydrated. It's just the way your brain communicates that signal. And so I also put people, listen, you should be having to go to the restroom every hour. Like, that's crazy. I'm like, and some people have difficulty with that because their job doesn't let
Right.
them do that. But ideally, we should all have to go to the restroom every hour to have to go urinate. And if you do that, you're going to feel better, have more energy, and you're going to lose more weight. And you're going to feel like, man, I'm not as hungry as I normally thought I was. And that's the biggest factor I think people have problem, because we all over-caffeinate now.
I'm guilty.
Everybody, they take some kind of pick-me-up, what is it, those the Red Bulls or the Monsters or any of that stuff. Or we just like drinking espressos. I like my caffeine in the afternoon, and it's great. But I know that I got to drink a lot of water to make up for that. And I don't really feel as good. And then even to go gym or exercise, I don't feel as good. And I don't know why. It's because you're dehydrated. You should always get up in the morning, drink a 16-ounce glass of water before you do anything else.
Wow.
And if you're going to have a little cup of coffee, make sure you do 2 cups of water to make up for that.
As a child, I know now that I was not hydrated enough. I was very dehydrated. I always had headaches. I was always complaining, I don't feel good. I have a headache, just sluggish and all that. Now they've got a commercial on. Most kids are dehydrated. Go figure.
Yeah. And that's absolutely the case. And then I forgot the other mention, of course, is booze. Because, people just drink a lot of, alcohol too, and that's, alcohol is a diuretic too. So you're essentially urinating out all your electrolytes. You're depleting your water fluids in your body, so you're dehydrated. And so, there's people who never drink any fluids except coffee. Can you imagine how dehydrated they are all the time?
Oh my gosh.
All the time. And so that is a big push in my weight loss suggestions for patients too, or recommendations that really hydrate well. Like how much? 120 ounces a day. You get 120 ounces a day. Well, that's a lot of water, doc.
Yeah.
Well, if you do exercise and go to the gym, you're going to probably put down 50, 60 ounces of fluid just to feel better. And then you got 60 ounces to drink throughout the day. That's not very much fluids. And I tell people, if you can do more than 120 ounces, you should. So 120 ounces, if you're exercising, that's a minimum, because you got to take you should be taking a glass of fluids with your meals too on top of that. But if you're not exercising, 120 ounces is what you should be taking probably. And that's an estimate, because that would probably take you to the restroom every hour.
Wow.
And not interfere with your life enough. But if you eat foods and you time a lot of fluid intake around it, you don't have to be at the restroom all the time. But it does help. If you're taking fluids on an empty stomach, you're gonna be at the restroom a lot. But hydration is really important.
Okay, I get bored with the taste or tastelessness of water. Now, if I sprinkle in, one of these little vitamin C.
Give a little flavor?
Yeah, just give it a little flavor. Does that kind of take away from the hydration, like coffee and tea does?
No, not at all. I think if you feel like I need to have a little flavor in my water, you want to squeeze a little lime in it, a little lemon.
Yeah.
This is minimal calories. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
I get the little packets of the crystallized lime and crystallized lemon.
Right, and I think that's okay to do, because I think that's gonna, like you say, you have an aversion for the taste of water.
After a while, it's just same old stuff,
Right. I'm gonna say this: if you're a fasting person, if you're gonna do an intermittent fast, because intermittent fast is a great way of losing weight too. You just got to train your body to go into that intermittent fast. And I always explain this to people, is that if you're going to intermittent fast, it should be a minimum of 10 hours. People say, why do 16? That's fantastic. Do 16 then. But some people may argue and say, well, I can't do 16. Well, can you do 10? Yeah, I can do 10. That's good enough. People say, well, how do you know that's not good enough? Well, actually, if you read this research studies on it, and there's a doc out of USC, and his name is Vitor Longo, and he writes a lot of information on intermittent fasting and research that's been done on it. He really says, man, 10-hour fast actually can be pretty effective. The key is when you're fasting is that you should not be overly exerting your body. Okay? So what I mean is, like, you probably don't need to go on this huge, like, if you're out there construction working, okay, 10-hour intermittent fast might be a little bit too long, because you're building and taking apart. It's a lot of stress on the muscles. Even though they're going to dehydrate well, they're going to need a little bit of fuel. Okay, so you got to give them some fuel. Now, if you're sitting at your desk, or hanging around the house, not doing too much, a 10-hour fast is excellent. Okay, because you're not forcing the breakdown. Because when your body's in a stress state, your body does not discriminate in its hormone response to stress. That means it releases adrenaline and cortisol, and these are breakdown hormones, right? So cortisol helps elevate sugar in your body, but also makes cholesterol, just so you know. And then your adrenalines, or epinephrine, norepinephrine, these are going to make fat breakdown for energy. Okay, so you go through beta oxidation to make calories available for energy. The trick is to reduce those, because if you don't reduce those, then they're going to come out and they're going to break down muscle too. I don't want to break down my muscle. I want my muscle. Why? Because your muscle is the only thing that burns calories. Fat doesn't burn fat. Doesn't have the potential. But muscle does, and organ function does. So if your activity is limited, if you're a very active person, like you're doing strenuous work, you should not be doing intermittent fast on those days. That's my opinion. Some other doctors may differ on that opinion, but I'm thinking about glucose levels, to maintain glucose levels, to feel good and be functional and not be depleted. And I don't want you to break down muscle tissue, because that makes no sense. And I think because you want to use that for breaking down fat. But if you're like, a pretty sedentary job, then I think you can manage that because you're going to really minimize the adrenaline and cortisol release, as opposed to strenuous work, it's going to make all these hormones elevate to break down tissue to make it available for energy. And there's where you have muscle breaking down, fat breaking down, all your sugar stores in your muscles that are held for storage are only there for like 15-20 minutes of a cardio workup. So if you're exercising after 15 minutes, you ain't got any sugar stores left in the muscles. So it's got to burn something.
Yeah, I was under a lot of stress for quite a few years dealing with one of the big banks. Won't go into that now, but I was talking to somebody and I said, you know, the stress was causing a lot of my weight problems.
Yes.
And this person kept saying, stress eating, stress eating. I said, no, stress alone, cortisol.
Cortisol, and it also causes a mineralocorticoid to be released too, because when you release cortisol, it kind of has this global effect.
Okay.
So it also causes your mineralocorticoid, which is your salt-retaining hormone, to be released from your adrenal glands. So it will hold also. It's going to release the hormone, it's going to hold water, it's going to hold salt in your diet. So anything you salt, it's going to hold it. Okay, and that helps it retain water. Okay, it's also going to elevate your blood pressure a little bit and things like that too. So, yeah, and the other idea is that stress hormone depletes your energy levels. So when you're depleted and then you feel like, oh boy, I'm gaining weight, I don't want to eat anything, so you don't eat any food, then you have no energy or metabolism available to burn calories either. So you've got to think of the state of mind. The state of mind is really important in weight loss, right? So it's great to be happy, it's great to have positive mentality, positive energy, positive surrounding. That's going to make for a great environment. And so you should always be steady. And it's really easy to say that. It's hard to practice though.
Right.
You always got to be the cooler, not the hothead. You got to be the cooler, because when you're the cooler, things happen in a positive direction. You manage your emotions, you manage the hormone levels, you manage them. That's super critical. Okay? Then you have your nutrition, and you eat slow, you do portion control, you hydrate like crazy. You got a mild to moderate exercise routine. You don't have to exercise like crazy. You just got to do something, right?
Right.
Right? See, because you want to make a little muscle, then you want to burn more calories that way, and you want to tone whatever you're trying to make out of your body. So, and I think the other critical part is getting sleep. If you can get 7.5 hours of sleep a night, you're going to feel fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been very interesting.
That's my pleasure.